So it's Cold Friday, and it's our first class of advanced server-side scripting. So this is our last programming class together, and we'll just dive right into it. So I did post the announcement, but just a refresher. I know our class time has been scheduled for 8 a.m. So long as we are online, we will start the class at 9 a.m. We'll try to finish by 11, although there may be some times where we go longer than that. And actually, I'm just going to interrupt that because we've just gotten an email from the college about winter plans. Just came in my inbox, so let's see. My prediction without reading the email is the full semester is going to be online, but we're going to see. I have no knowledge. Okay, so we will be online until reading week, which goes February 28th to March 4th. But they are not sure. So we'll continue to take a remote first approach and only schedule in-person activity where necessary. So that to me says that our semester is going to be, at least for us, for our program, I think we will be staying online for the rest of the semester, it looks like. That's not absolutely guaranteed, but if the college is saying remote first, then as much as many of us, including me, might like to be back on campus, it doesn't look like, it seems unlikely that we will be this semester. Morning, Tanya. So I think the expectation is that that our program and our courses probably going to remain fully online for the balance of the semester. I know there are probably mixed feelings in the class about that. Some people have really wanted to come back and at least get a small window to learn on campus. I know for others that would be really inconvenient, and staying online is going to make your lives much easier. So looks like that's how we're going to be proceeding. So that being the case, we'll start at 9. Unless we're advised we're going back, which doesn't seem likely. All right, so we'll go over the plan for the course. So this is our advanced server-side scripting class. It follows the server-side scripting with ASP.NET. This class is more complex. We're using a lot of the principles that we learned in our ASP.NET class, but Visual Studio kind of did a lot of automation for us and a lot of heavy lifting. In this class, we're doing a lot more of those things manually, which requires a little bit of a deeper level of understanding how things like OOP and MVC and APIs work, because we're not having too much code auto-generated for us the way that a lot of it was when we worked in the Microsoft space. There's no textbook for the course. My office hours obviously are the same, middays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And you can use Calendly to book. This stuff's all the same. I don't think we really need to go over all of these things in terms of how to succeed. I do need to just update that because this is. So I'll update it. Now, the assessments in this class are a little bit different. You will notice, probably much to your delight, there's no midterm or final exam in the class. So your marks are more heavily weighted to your assignments. Your first assignment, which will be due before reading week, will be to create a portfolio website for yourself that describes a bit about who you are, your background, your skills, your experience, and features some of the projects that you've done. And this is designed to help you when you finish your semester and you are out looking for work. Many employers have told us that all web designers, web developers need to have a portfolio that showcases your work. So you're going to build one in class for marks, but then you'll have that portfolio to take you forward beyond school. We're going to have some labs and quizzes. The quiz format is different in this class than it's been in our other courses. We're not going to have a quiz every single week. We're going to have, I believe, 3 quizzes, and they're going to be in short answer format, not multiple choice. Okay, but you're still a quiz you do at home, and you'll still have a week to do them. We'll have a few labs. A couple of them are coding labs. A couple of them are sort of some non-coding activities. I have to double check. I'm not sure. There are either 3 or 4 labs. Assignment 2 is an easy 5%. You're going to submit a project plan, just a simple 1-page Word document outlining what kind of project you want to build for your 3rd assignment. Your 3rd assignment is a CRUD application using our JavaScript technology stack. And then the last assignment, this is instead of a final exam. So because there's no exam in this class, what we're going to do instead in the last week of class is, because you're going to work in groups, and each group is going to teach a 1-hour lesson to the rest of the class. Okay, so we're going to identify some things that are related to our technology stack, but maybe I didn't cover in the original curriculum that you would like to learn more about. And with the people in your group, you're going to do some study, learn how that technology works, and then for 1 hour, you're going to teach it to the rest of us, give us an interactive kind of demo where we can follow along and you teach us how that tool works. So that'll be in our last class of the semester, and that will be instead of an exam. Okay, you need to earn your 50. Due dates will be Thursday nights at midnight for all assignments. So you'll have until midnight the day before class to submit anything, with late submissions reduced by 20% per day. Okay, if you need an extension, you have a good reason, please reach out to me and let me know why you're asking for more time, and we can discuss it. Okay, and again, there's no makeup assignments or late submissions, however, at the end of the term. I think everybody knows this. I'm not too worried about that with this class. I will spare you the plagiarism talk. I will say that I did teach this class last semester and did have, actually, sorry, last year, though, I taught the last couple of semesters, I did have a couple students submit projects that basically they found online. And I was able to find the projects. I could tell they were not the way we did them in class. Well, yes, David. So I got a super advanced portfolio last January for assignment 1 from a student who never came to class. They were taking the class from the second time, and their portfolio featured all kinds of code that we never learned in class that was far above what they needed to find. So sure enough, I did a little digging, and I found the GitHub repository that they had downloaded and put their own name in. And in fact, I had a code review meeting with the student, and I asked them to open the project on their computer and run it locally, run the site locally, and they weren't even able to do that. Now, that student got a 0 in a misconduct. That was in this class for the portfolio last semester. So that was an awesome use of my time. I was, as usual, super happy to spend my time dealing with that. The best I can figure is that a student who does that probably isn't really interested in being a professional developer. We do have students, not many, but some students, they really just want their diploma, but they're maybe not in a program that interests them. They want to do something else for work. So it maybe doesn't matter to them that they have a diploma with no skills on it, but don't have actually the skills. May not matter to them. It's obviously a huge problem to everybody else involved. That's what creates a huge problem for the college, for our reputation, but it also affects the other students who then have that same diploma. And it affects my reputation as well. If I'm giving out credits to students who have no skills, then it makes me look like I'm incompetent. Um, so it's a fairly selfish act to go and submit work and not make any effort to do the work or have the skills, because it kind of degrades everyone else's degrades the reputation and the credential that everybody else has earned. It also means, as I think one of my colleagues pointed out, when you guys are working, when you're building applications, we're trusted with a lot of sensitive data, right? We develop authentication schemes for our clients. We manage the credentials. We manage their data. We have access to a lot of sensitive, we know how their businesses work. We have access to a lot of sensitive information. The only way we can do that effectively is if we're honest and trustworthy. We ask clients to entrust us with a lot of really private and important information. So if you can't be trusted to do your own work at school, it's going to be very difficult to trust you professionally, and that's going to cause a lot of problems if you're not trustworthy. But there's my little. I'll get off my soapbox now about that. So here's our schedule. So we're going to do an intro today, NPM and routing. We'll dive into Express, and then we'll have our first lab and quiz at the beginning of February. We'll spend a couple weeks working with getting used to MongoDB and building an application where we can do create, read, update, and delete. And your portfolio will be due down here. So before the Family Day weekend will be assignment 1, your portfolio. We'll start on authentication before reading week. Again, there is no midterm exam. We'll finish authentication off after reading week. Then we're going to spend about 3 or 4 weeks working with Angular. We'll do kind of a standalone lesson learning about Angular and TypeScript. And then we're going to start to incorporate Angular into the rest of our stack and build a single page application. And then we'll look at bundling it and deploying it. We are short 1 class because we're on Friday. Our second last week of class is actually Good Friday, and the school's closed. And then in our final class, your last ever class at Georgian for most of you, you guys will do your 50-minute tutorial presentations in groups. We may shift things around a little bit, but by and large, I just taught this class again this past semester in the fall for the computer programming students. So we should be able to stick fairly close to this schedule. Anybody have any questions about our topics or sequence, assignment, anything at all? All right, so we can dive into this stuff. So actually, I will just quickly upload the new syllabus. I'll just overwrite the doc. They made a couple little changes to it. I usually have to make about 7 or 8 versions of these before they're final. So same faculty info here, my LinkedIn page, office hours, meetings, etc. Under tools and resources, again, you can find the YouTube playlist for our class. Code will obviously always be published up to GitHub as well. In terms of software for the course, up to you. Typically in the past, I've used WebStorm by JetBrains, which is a free product. I know a lot of you, I used PHP Storm a couple semesters ago, so in our PHP class. I might actually try, I think I'm actually going to try using Visual Studio Code this semester, but you're free to use WebStorm, Visual Studio Code. Really, any code editor you like will work for Node. We will need to install Node today, so we can actually go ahead and do that install now. So Node.js is our primary backend language we're going to be using. I'll put the link in the chat. It's also here on Blackboard. So I want you to go to Node. It should recognize your operating system. So if you're a Mac user, that's no problem. You can run everything you need for this class on your Mac. It's totally fine. So you can, I'd probably use get the 16.13.2, the recommended for most users. The latest, I'm not sure, is in full release. So I'd probably recommend this one, but the version's not too critical. So it's a free download. Go ahead and install Node, and maybe just give me a thumbs up in the WebEx or say done in the chat once that's been done. I'll pause the recording while we do that. Should be installed. There's some other resources here. We'll look at some of these later. I've also, as usual, as I always do, I've posted the git commands from the command line or terminal. There's also a git ignore file here for Node, which we'll use later on. Okay, so let's kind of jump into, so what we want to do is well, we've done an overview of the course. We've installed Node. We're going to talk about Node and the mean stack, kind of a bit of an overview, and then we'll play around with it a little bit. Now, normally, I was going to do this kind of in a breakout session, but we've got a pretty small group, so I think we can just do this on our own. So let's see. Okay, we've got, how many questions did I post here? Posted 7 questions. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to take one of these questions. I'll pause the recording. Take one of the questions. I'll give you 5 minutes. And I want you to find an answer to any one of these questions, and then just post it in this discussion board thread here. So if you click the discussion board thread. So just go and make a reply. You can do it on your own. So answer any one of these questions, but not everybody pick the first one. Okay, so I'll give you 5 minutes, go and find an answer and post it in your own words. Don't just copy and paste an answer from Wikipedia, the first entry you see. Yeah, I'll pause the recording, give you about 5 minutes. Find answers to one of these questions. It's a bit of an introduction to our tech stack. Okay, we will start now. And I'll just add, if you are watching the lesson video later, after Friday morning, you can still make a reply and contribute in the discussion forum. Resume and summarize. So our mean stack is MongoDB, Express.js, AngularJS, which is now actually just known as Angular. AngularJS was actually version 1, and from version 2 forward, they've renamed the technology just to Angular. And Node.js. So it's an end-to-end JavaScript. That's right. So we've got JavaScript all the way from the front end, the middleware, the back end code, and even our database. It's all JavaScript. And it's designed, yeah, particularly for cloud. Tanya said it's open source. Yep. And also mentioned cloud. So it is flexible, very scalable, and extensible. From IBM. Tanya also mentioned it's efficient. It allows us to develop, to be productive because we're using a single language all the way through our application. It makes easy to share the code, and performance is a big thing. We'll talk more about that. Thanks, Tanya. Colton mentions that it's scalable. So yeah, if we're going to have applications with many, many concurrent users, then the mean stack is an excellent choice. And as Matthew says, we very commonly use it in single page applications. So these would be small web applications, aren't necessarily complex, but we have real-time data and we want the data to always be current on the page. So Chris talks about calling other services, and yes, we're going to do that. Increased performance and handling. It is easy to learn, particularly for those developers who have a JavaScript background, which you guys do. So event-driven programming is part of the key to the structure of how this works. So the idea is, and we'll find out a little bit more about this, is we have this event loop. We have a server that's constantly listening for events, like a click event coming in or a request, HTTP request, and it's constantly checking for events. And every time a new request comes in, that event loop then can respond, send some kind of HTTP response. We're going to work with NoSQL databases. So Ralph says it's a non-relational database system. And the key is there's no fixed schema. So the databases we've worked with so far, MySQL and SQL Server, we have to create table structures that predefine the structure of our data. In NoSQL, we don't have any particular schema. So our database, the structure is flexible, and it's largely used for very high volume. So something like, can anybody think of any examples? What would be examples of web applications that would produce tremendous volumes of data? That might be simple data, but we'd have lots and lots of it. Can you think of a web application that would generate tons of data in a very short time? Okay, could be a to-do list. Yep, if you're really busy. What class did you guys have last night or Wednesday night? Think of the class you had with Matt Wilson. Right, you had Arduino. So Arduinos are used often for Internet of Things applications. What would be an example of an Internet of Things application that would produce a tremendous amount of data that would need to be stored? Can you think of a scenario where you might use lots of those devices? Not sure. Well, I mean, Internet of Things are really used. Yeah, okay, so smart cars, exactly. Think how many sensors a vehicle like, let's say, a Tesla has, right? And it's recording metrics about everything in the car at all times. Okay, so if you have a Tesla, you have an app and you can see how all the different components of the car are reporting. So something like the database for a smart car, NoSQL would be an excellent choice. It's not complex data, but we have a huge volume of data. And we typically do not use, yeah, it stands for not only SQL, but typically we do not need SQL commands to manipulate and work with the data in a NoSQL database. Thanks, Ralph. And then I also asked you, we're going to talk about blocking and non-blocking code. So Jake said that blocking and synchronous are the same. So let's say we make a call out to an API to fetch some data. The thread hangs until we get some kind of response back. So maybe let's say we're writing an HTML page. We want to render a bunch of HTML, but we also need to make a call to an API, to a third-party service to get some data we want to render. Traditionally, in synchronous code, once we made that call out to the API, until the data comes back, we couldn't render other parts of the page. We'd have to wait until that operation was complete. So Node was the first web framework, web technology that allowed us to write non-blocking or asynchronous code. So we could do something like call an API, but while we were waiting and fetching the data, we could continue executing other code and doing other things. So our API call would run in the background, and we could do other things like render the rest of our HTML and CSS to the browser so the user's browser isn't blank while we're waiting to fetch the data. So Node was actually created, I think, way back in 2008 or 2009 by an engineer at Google. And then we actually saw this asynchronous model when we worked with ASP.NET last term, but Node created it. And now Microsoft has copied many of the features of Node, including this ability to make asynchronous calls, and this is one of the things Chris mentioned, how it's good for performance. The asynchronous nature is part of the reason that we get increased performance, because we can run one process in the background and still do other things at the same time. Okay, so those are some useful answers. Again, if you're watching this video later, please make your own contribution to the discussion thread. Okay. Before I continue, I also like you guys to have a quick look. I'll, again, pause the recording rather than sharing the video through the recording. Probably easier you just watch the video. It's 11 minutes. It's from Code School, and even though the video is old, it's 9 years old now, it's actually a really great introduction to how and why Node got created, how the blocking and non-blocking code works, and also an introduction to some of the syntax that you're going to see with Node, which will be, it takes a little while sometimes to get your head around it. It can be a little bit unfamiliar. So I'm going to, again, pause the recording. When you watch the 11-minute video, just give me a thumbs up or say done in the chat when you've had a chance to review it. And then we'll come back and look at some of the elements in the video together. What did you learn anything from that video? Was there anything useful other than Code School has a really cool jingle? Anything you learned about synchronous or asynchronous code or the Node event loop? If it all went over your head, that's okay. It's day one. Okay, so Ralph, you said the detailed explanation of blocking and non-blocking was helpful, so you can see the performance. Yeah, David, it will make more sense once we dive in, and we'll write some examples today where we write the same code, one in a blocking or synchronous fashion, and then one in a non-blocking or asynchronous fashion, and we can see how they compare. So we'll try that out. Okay, it's 9:50. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a 10-minute break here. We will come back at 10 o'clock. I'm going to do just a mini lecture, go over a few slides that I've posted on Blackboard, and then we're going to write about 4 or 5 fairly brief files working with just with Node for today. Okay, so let's take a break, and we will come back at 10 o'clock.